Mark Butcher, another tour that makes us think, can we beat these guys? England's tour of the West Indies in 1998 was one of missed opportunities. No English side had won in the Caribbean for 30 years, and none had won a series against major opposition since Mike Gatting's team in Australia in 1986-87. But had lines not been fluffed and luck not deserted them at vital moments, all that could have changed. Instead, a batting collapse in the final session of the last test handed Brian Lara's far-from-vintage outfit a flattering 3-1 scoreline. We should have come away with a creditable 2-1 loss at least. We should have won both matches in Trinidad, because West Indies made the highest score of the game in the fourth innings to win the first game. We had the upper hand in Barbados, but it rained for most of day 5 and should have salvaged a draw in Antigua, said Mark Butcher, who on his first test tour took England over the line for their solitary win in Port of Spain. We had our chances. The collapse in Antigua was the only time where we rolled over. The rest of the time it was relatively close. England's biggest problem was that Curtly, Ambrose and Courtney Walsh remained champion bowlers, despite both being in their mid-30s. When a mix-up between Thorpe and Nasser Hussain led to a run out on the last day in Antigua, both fast bowlers ran off the field to switch trainers for bowling boots. Neither had expected to bowl again, but with this surprise opening, they sensed a chance. It was a chilling sign for England. Sure enough, their last 6 wickets tumbled for 21, 4 to Walsh, giving him 22 for the series. Ambrose's return was a staggering 30 at 14.26. Yet England's batsmen still went toe-to-toe with them for much of the time. For Butcher, who will be commentating on next month's series for the host broadcasters, the trip provided a crash course in the idiosyncrasies of cricket in the Caribbean. After a long layoff following the English season, the team under coach David Lloyd and captain Mike Atherton arrived early to train for a week in Antigua before moving on to Jamaica. But net sessions were spoiled by rain. Butcher and Adam Hollyoake gave each other throwdowns on the concrete paths at the resort hotel, and the pitch at Montego Bay was dreadful. You could not make up Butcher's story. An early decision was taken on the starting 11 for the first test, and as he was not in it he sat out both warm-up games. He understood the rationale. I fully expected to carry drinks and be left to gain experience on my first tour simply by being around the group. Then, on the morning of the Sabina Park test, Jack Russell, the most fastidious eater in the group, went down with food poisoning and pulled out 30 minutes from the start. Butcher was in and down to bat 3. He must have had mixed feeling. Both grandparents on his mother's side were Jamaican, so to play in a test match at Sabina Park was a special thing, but against that the state of the pitch had been causing concern for days. When Atherton and Hussain inspected it on one of the practice days, the 2 sets of stumps were being lined up with string, and to their alarm it was resting on some parts and not others. Hussain likened the surface to a corrugated iron roof. Those who were down to play had spent the night before the game customizing their protective equipment. It proved time well spent. During the 61 balls that the England batsmen faced, 3 wickets fell and physio Wayne Morton was summoned to the middle 6 times. On the 6th occasion, Atherton went out too, waved on by Stewart, who had somehow survived since the start but just been struck for the 3rd time, and after a short conference between captains and umpires, everyone left the field. The abandonment soon followed. Butcher had taken a brute of a delivery first up, a ball that flew from a length and gave him no chance. A 4-month wait for a first ball duck. An additional test was added to the schedule, meaning back-to-back tests in Trinidad, in what proved to be searing temperatures. Butcher was dropped for the first of them and would not have featured in the second had not Hollyoake succumbed to a back injury and Mark Ramprakash to influenza. He was now to bat 6, which was important when England were left needing 225 to win. Butcher had batted grittily for 28 in the first innings, and now as England haemorrhaged wickets following a first-wicket stand of 129 between Atherton and Stewart, he played the anchor role with an even more painstaking 24 not out. We'd been there 5 or 6 weeks and I hadn't batted at all apart from 1 ball in Sabina Park, so it was a case of getting your head down, taking a few blows and trying to cussedly get as many leg byes as we could to get us over the line, he recalled. I don't think I faced anyone but Curtly and Courtney. They literally bowled the whole time. I was not out overnight on the 4th evening. A few of us went out for dinner and they were all like, here we go again, and I was going, no, it'll be fine. We've got it under control. It was the naivety of youth really. But myself and Jack, and then Dean Headley and me, did sort it. There were some nervous Thailanders in the dressing room hoping not to get in. It took England a nerve-wracking 108 overs to reach their target. Atherton reckoned that the tosses in Guyana and Antigua were the most crucial in his time as captain, and he lost them both. The 352 that West Indies posted in Georgetown was decisive. An unusually dry pitch was crumbling by day 2 and England could scratch out only 170 and 137. Butcher, who described his role as Mr. Utility, was now cast as number 3 bat and first change seamer, remembers the game for a spell from Ambrose that highlighted how the great players can raise their performance when they need to. As a young test match cricketer, I'd played against Curtly a lot for Surrey versus Northants and I thought I could take care of myself, but he bowled a spell in our second innings which was like, oh my god, I see the difference now. The loss of the series signaled the end for Atherton's captaincy. He gathered the players in the cramped Antigua dressing room to tell them, in a voice cracking with emotion, that he had taken the team as far as he could. He had been talked out of quitting the previous summer against his better judgment. Now, he would wonder whether a new captain might have had that vital spark or energy that I felt on my 5th tour as captain was lacking. It was that sort of tour, the one that got away. Butcher reflected. There were creditable performances throughout. Angus Fraser took a hatful of wicket. Ramps made a brilliant 100. Stewart played magnificently. But it was another loss to West Indies and you were left thinking, when are we ever going to beat these guys? The answer would come in 2004.